This is a smaller scale figure I picked up from a restock on Native's site. I always thought Native is only a distributor of figures, but apparently they have their own lineup of figures as well. This is the Sexual Stewardess figure made by Native, which was originally released back in 2017. It's a 1/7 scale figure, and is quite small compared to our other figures. The box is very well done, and connects to the figure perfectly. It's made to look like her suitcase with a printed tag showing the name and the info on the figure. The brown suitcase area is printed in a matte brown color, while the white straps are in a glossier paint, which is pretty cool. Sadly, just like binding boxes, there are no pictures of the actual figure itself. The illustration is also not included, but I believe the original release back in 2017 came with a postcard that had the illustration on it. She comes with quite a few accessories, and some of them are pretty cool. Starting from the top, we get her hat, which attaches to her head magnetically, which is pretty great. Next, we get a half Japanese passport, which is used to slot between her breasts. However, this thing is notorious for falling off since it's staying purely by friction. The biggest accessory is the suitcase, and has a circular hole on the open, bulging side for the next accessory, which is a vibrator. This slots into the hole in the suitcase, and according to the instructions, is supposed to hang out. The problem is that the hole in the suitcase is huge, and it ends up completely inside the suitcase, which is really hard to get back out without tweezers. Her underwear is removable, and is a 2-piece plastic affair. We also get a really thin plastic base, but it is incredibly detailed, with an amazing marble pattern and even grooves to replicate the panels. Then we get the most interesting accessories, which are 2 wands that we would see at airports. One of them is the same scale as her, so 1/7, and the other one is huge. The big one comes with batteries and it will light up with the red LED light and vibrate if you press the button. This is obviously used to replicate the illustration that this figure is based off of. Her brown hair has good painting, with some lighter shades of brown here and there to create the highlights. The detail near the top of her head is a bit lacking though, but the hair flowing down the back looks good enough, with more detail and separate strands. The front bangs look okay. It just looks too two-dimensional and doesn't pop. Also, there's a very obvious seam line between the bangs and the back of the hair. The braided part looks pretty good though. Her hat is attached with a pretty strong magnet in her head, and it stays incredibly well. It can rotate to any angle you want, but there isn't much detail on the hat. At least the orange edge highlight is well painted. I'm very surprised at how well the eyes are painted, especially at this smaller scale. The nose is there, and the mouth is nothing more than a small slit to express her troubled look. The slight pink blush on her cheeks is subtle and looks good. Her ears have okay detail, and the right ear is actually sculpted too, even though it's 90% covered by her hair. I'd say overall the facial expression is bang on to the illustration. The orange bow looks really good, with folds molded, as well as great white and orange patterned painting. The only thing that was slightly disappointing is that Native didn't hollow out the top of the bow, so now it looks like a giant lump instead of actual fabric tied to form the bow. Her shirt has somehow dropped around her elbow and has exposed her ample breasts. Her bra is nowhere to be found, so I assume that's why she has to cover herself with her right hand. There's some pink highlight painting on the breasts, and the sculpting is okay. The little passport accessory goes right between her breasts and has legible gold kanji on the front, which is pretty cool. The white shirt is actually sculpted very nicely, with lots of fabric folds done right. The bottom part of the shirt is still buttoned up, so the top part of the shirt hangs open realistically. There's also good separation from the skin, but I think the shirt is still a little bit too thick. But I can forgive Native since this is a pretty small figure. The end of the sleeves here have a blue collar with bronze buttons. Not a great deal of detail here, but painting is great. There is some semblance of the collarbone sculpted under the orange bow, but otherwise, her shoulder and exposed skin areas don't have much anatomical details. Mainly just a smooth sculpt. To be fair, most of her back is covered by her hair and the shirt, so I wouldn't expect much under there anyways. Her arms are incredibly thin, especially her left arm. I think Native could have bulked her up a little bit in this area. She's wearing white gloves on both hands, and they have decent detail. There's fabric folds sculpted near the edge, which is nice. There's also some very light pink highlight painting. Her right hand is holding or covering her left breast. and where the fingers are digging in, they actually go into the breast. This is good attention to detail on Native's part. Her left hand is simply in a flat pose to hold herself against the suitcase, so nothing special here. Her blue skirt looks great, just like the shirt. There's lots of folds molded here as well, since her skirt has somehow rolled up to her thigh. There's also a black belt on the molded hoops, and the belt buckle is a simple, well-painted, rectangular bronze piece. Because her skirt has rolled up so much, we get to see her underwear. It has a giant heart-shaped cutout in the back, where the butt is. The underwear is actually two pieces tabbed together and are split front and back. The plastic that Native used is a clear, smoky plastic. I'm guessing because they wanted the sheer look. There's actually some detail sculpted on the clear section, but it's hard to tell what it is. I'm going to guess it's flowers of some sort. This is all great, except that the plastic is the harder type, maybe because it's the clear stuff, and it doesn't conform well. That means the underwear doesn't stay on properly, especially on the left side. The edges are supposed to go under the skirt, and that should hold it in place. It doesn't work. Her butt has a decent shape, but there's not a lot of anatomical details here either. Her thighs are again nothing special. There's some shape molded there, but nothing detailed. There are magnets supposedly around the two thighs, which allow easy placement of the figure onto the suitcase. Really, I couldn't really tell they were there. The magnets here don't seem to be as strong as the one in the head. And with the pose of the figure, it's already kinda naturally sitting on the suitcase anyway, though I appreciate that Native put the magnets in to help with the placement. We now get to the pantyhose, which has somehow come down to almost knee height. This is a pretty cool thing that Native did here. The stretch of the pantyhose fabric between her legs looks realistic and has folds along the edges. The coolest thing is that the material is the clear plastic again, yet where the rest of the pantyhose goes down to her foot, it isn't clear because it's still on her leg. The calf and ankles have a bit more shape than the other body parts, but again, her legs are incredibly thin. I really like that fabric wrinkle on the back of her left ankle though. The shoes themselves are painted in gloss black with okay detail. The right shoe is hanging off her foot, which is a breath of fresh air since it's something different. It really adds to the figure. There's also white paint on the insole, which is a great detail. I also like the folds on the shoe fabric on the right shoe because of the pose of her foot. We finally get down to the suitcase, which I personally think is one of the best parts of the figure. The detail and sculpting all around is fantastic. The straps have great definition and are painted in the glossy off-white color. The rivets and buckles all have great bronze painting. The wheels look great as well. Even the pull-out handle is done right. Because the suitcase is overflowing, there's even light paint highlights on the middle of the handle to show that it's bowing out. On the back side of the luggage, we have the opening side actually slightly ajar, and this is where the vibrator is supposed to go. Under low light, the illusion is pretty good, but with better lighting, you can see that the hole of the slot doesn't go very deep. Finally, here's the figure with all the bits that can be removed. Her skirt can be easily removed by removing her torso. The underwear easily comes off since it wasn't staying on well anyways. The bottom edge of the shirt actually looks pretty good. The thickness isn't too bad and looks believable. The only other thing of note are her genitals. Those are sculpted with reasonable detail, and Native went as far as to paint a layer of gloss clear coat over that area only. I'm sure you can imagine the reason. I think overall this pose is okay. It would look better if there were better anatomical sculpting around the hip area, so I'm personally going to display her with her clothes on. This is a fun figure with quite a few gimmicks. Some of them aren't that great, like that vibrating, almost life-size metal detector wand, but most of them work well enough. This is my first figure made by Native, and I'm impressed with their work. It's not a perfect figure, but for the price of around 14,000 yen, this is excellent value. The details that Native put in really deserve praise, and I definitely would not hesitate to get more Native figures in the future.